Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 12 o'clock on a Sunday, which means it's time for a Q&A. Now, this is where I take all the questions that you've asked over the course of the week, and I try to answer them to the best of my ability. Now, like I've said to you many times on this channel, get your questions in by Monday at the latest. I typically film these on a Tuesday, so if you want to guarantee to get your question answered, you want to get it in as quickly as possible. If I have missed your question, I very much apologise. Leave it down below. I'll get back to it next week. You are getting my raw and filtered opinions with these particular videos, which means that I don't kind of read them beforehand and prepare an answer. It's an off-the-cuff answer. If I think something needs a longer answer, I'll probably do a longer video on it at some point on the channel. And one final thing is I want to say thank you to every single person that's watched any videos on Magic TV, subscribed, interacted, commented. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you guys, so thank you very much. And with that all being said, I'm looking at the Q&A. There's a lot of questions from last week, which is great, and I'm going to get straight into it with this week's Q&A. So the first question is from Andy Putt, who has got 3 questions, so we'll take them one by one. He says, hope I've had a fun Easter weekend. I have, thank you very much. So I have 3 questions, one for each of the 3 Craigs I know, random. Question 1 for Magician Craig. Do you have any recommendations for tricks the Spectator does? I will explain what you mean. There are tricks like the Solution, Paradox, Maxim, etc. Do you have a recommendation for more tricks like that? Because in the examples I named, the wondering is so much bigger because for the Spectator, it feels like they did everything themselves. And I believe those tricks are the strongest ones. Yeah, the Solution is a perfect example. Paradox is a perfect example. Maxim, yeah, okay, I see where you're coming from here. Okay, so a couple off the top of my head. I've got a really cool version of Triumph that I published on the Netrix. So it's on the Netrix. It's a version of Triumph. If you're a Netrix subscriber, you'll be able to go and check it out. And it's based on the Solution by Michael Murray, but in the context of doing a Triumph. So the whole idea is that you get somebody to pick a card, it's lost in the pack, and you tell people that what you want, you get a spectator up on stage and you tell them you want them to mix the cards up behind their back, but face up and face down. So they don't know which cards are pointing up, which cards are pointing down. They mix them up behind their back, they bring the cards out in front of them, they never touch them, and then all the cards are facing the same direction except for one, and that's the card that they picked, and it's a regular deck of cards. So that's a cool way of doing it. So that's on the Netrix. Another trick, I'm not trying to promote the Netrix here, but I have visited this plot a few times. So another trick that I've got on the Netrix is a version of McDonald's Aces, but the spectators do the vanishes. So it's a walk around piece. And the idea is that you have 3, you show the 4 aces, and each person gets an ace. So you get 4 spectators. 1 spectator's holding the ace of spades. You deal 3 cards on top of each ace. The spectator with the ace of spades is told that's the leader ace. They hold on to that in between their hands. The other 3 spectators follow you. They do what you do, right? Basically, you tell them what to do. They do a series of actions. Take the top card, put it to the bottom, turn the packet over, stuff like that. They end up with 3 cards face up, 1 card face down. When they turn that card over themselves, that's actually changed into an indifferent card. And then when the spectator that's been holding the ace of spades packet turns their cards over, they have the 4 aces. The cool thing is you've not touched the cards, you've not done anything, the spectator does everything. So 4 spectators are involved, they all do the vanishes themselves, and you don't do anything. It's my favourite way of doing McDonald's Aces, in all honesty. Another one that's not on the Netrix, or it might be, I'm not too sure, but where it is definitely on, is my masterclass from Vanishing Ink, is entrapment. Now, entrapment is a trick that I lectured at the Magic Circle, and I got a standing ovation after lecturing this at the Magic Circle. Basically what it is it's a coins across where the spectator is doing the vanish of the coins themselves, and they genuinely are. They don't know how they're doing it, but the coins are vanishing themselves from the spectator's hands, and they're appearing in another spectator's hands. It was one of the very first tricks I created. It was on the original flipped out, and the new version is on my masterclass from Vanishing Ink. So that's a great way of doing that. Spectator does the trick themselves. The other thing you want to look at, and again, I'm so sorry I'm giving you versions of my tricks, but it's just because, like I say, I've visited this plot a lot. The other thing you might want to consider is looking at the Penguin Holiday Special that I did, because I did a version of Angelo Carbone's Cue the Magic on there. And what made it kind of different and kind of unique is that you weren't using gimmicked cue cards. Now, what I love about Cue the Magic, and I've done it for years, is that interaction of them reading the cue card and them doing the trick. The problem is the audience knows they haven't really done the trick because the card ends up in an envelope that you obviously put the card in the envelope. So it's technically the magician doing the trick. Presentationally, it's the spectator. But with the version I put on Penguin Magic, the spectator takes a deck of cards, shuffles them themselves, turns one card over without knowing what the card is, shuffles the cards and puts the cards away in the box and puts the box in their pocket. You then get them to read a bunch of cue cards, and it turns out that the card that a spectator in the audience has freely named was the card the spectator turned over in the box from the very beginning. So they are doing the trick themselves, and you're coaching them through how to do the trick, which is a really cool way of doing it as well. So those are the ones that off the top of my head I can think of, which is the spectator doing the tricks. But this might make a really cool video. I could do like a video on the best tricks of all time where the spectator does the magic. And that's probably something I will do. But for now, that's probably a good jumping off point. Okay, so the next question again is from Andy Putt, and he says, this is a question from motivational speaker Craig. How would you advise people handle disappointments for things you have the ability to change and also things you don't have the ability to change because there's nothing in your power you can do about it? Everyone has disappointments from time to time, and I'd love to hear the perspective of a motivational speaker in that situation. Well, you know, the thing is, I speak to business people, so I'll take this from a business owner's point of view. Because as a magician, if you're ever getting paid to do gigs, or you ever have an income stream coming from magic, that means that is your business, right? And from a business point of view, when you have a business, and this is the problem that a lot of magicians have, they don't look at their business as a business, and they should. But if you concede that being a magician means that you have a business, it means that you're an entrepreneur. And where anybody that's been an entrepreneur for any length of time will know there's highs and there's lows and there's ups and there's downs and there's ebbs and there's flows. And I've talked about this on the channel many, many times. I remember just February 2020. I remember being just signing one of the biggest contracts I'd ever signed for my company that would have absolutely taken us to a completely different direction. I was at the top of cloud nine. I was so happy that I'd finally secured this contract. 1 month later, the contract had been cancelled and the entire country had been locked down. I could give you a million examples like that, where 1 minute you're on the top of you're at the top of the world, and the next minute you're down in a gutter. And that's entrepreneurialism. It's not like this. It's more like this. It's about the destination. It's not about the journey. So the thing is, as a business owner, you're always having to have disappointments in life. You're always going to have things that annoy you. And some of them you're going to be able to control. Some of them can't. My attitude is really simple. I have no problem failing as long as I fail forwards. And what I mean by that is, no one has ever gone out in their life and gone out and said, today I'm going to fuck up. That never happens. No one ever says that. No one ever plans to make a mistake. These things just happen. If you're scared about having disappointments, making mistakes, having things go wrong in your life, in your business, in your career, then you're going to be scared to do anything. You're never going to take any risks. You're never going to push yourself forward because you're never going to be in a situation where you can handle disappointment, right? So you have to accept that there's going to be disappointments, but what you do is you fail forward. You learn from that thing that's gone wrong, and that's really important because I know a lot of magicians, what they do is they don't blame, and I did this, so I can talk confidently about this, they blame the audience, not themselves. You'll walk away from a gig and you'll go, that was a terrible audience. That was a terrible audience. That was a terrible audience. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes I'm not going to say there's no such thing as bad audiences. Anybody that's worked holiday parks will know that there are. But there are times where it's not the audience, it's you. And if the same thing's happening over and over again, you kind of need to look inwards, because when you're pointing a finger at somebody, there's three fingers pointing back at you. You have to take accountability for things that are going wrong. And as long as you're failing forward, that's fine. So I would say when you hit adversity in your life, in your business, then learn from it, grow from it. There's never going to be anything that happens that completely wipes you out. It's very, very unlikely. So just grow from that situation. And with regards to stuff that you can't control, my advice is not to worry about it. Because here's the thing, right? I've got a friend called Cros Crosley. He calls himself the mindset technician. And he's an expert at dealing with mindset. And he says very, very simply, when you're in a situation, a stressful situation, you need to ask yourself a question. Have you done everything that you can to fix this situation? And if the answer is yes, you ask a second question, which is there anything else you can do? And if the answer is no, don't worry about it. Because if you've done everything you can do and there's nothing else that you can do, then sitting there worrying about it is not going to help anybody. You need to focus on the stuff that you can control. Control your controllables. Control the stuff that you can control. Because if you can't control it, what's the point in stressing about it, right? All it's going to do is it's just going to cause you undue worry. Now, if there's something you can do about it, do it, by all means, absolutely. If there's something you can do about it, do it. But if it's out of your control, if there's nothing you can do about it, just forget about it, bin it, until that point that you can do something about it, and then revisit that problem. We could speak for hours on this subject, but hopefully that'll kind of give you a bit of insight into my thought process when it comes to this sort of stuff. Okay, final question from Andy Putt is question number 3. Question for wrestling fan Craig. WrestleMania happened. What do you think about the event? I don't know if you want my opinion, but my opinion is that night 1 was shit except for the main event, and night 2 was awesome except for the main event. John Cena with number 17 was good, but I think the execution was shit. Match of the night was the men's triple threat for me. They ended night 1 on a high note with lots of questions left to uncover. And the best match of night 2 was the women's title or the men triple threat or the men's fatal 4-way. You had a lot of matches right with your predictions last week, but the most important thing of everything, do you believe in Joe Hendry? 1, yes, I absolutely do believe in Joe Hendry. 2, you know what? Magicians are a little bit like wrestling fans in that they'll always find something to bitch and moan about. I loved WrestleMania. Was every match brilliant? No, it wasn't. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole thing. I enjoyed night 1. I enjoyed night 2. I didn't find the Cena match bad. I thought it was okay. I thought it wasn't as good as some of the other matches on the card, but it was decent. And I think that it was understated because John Cena's trying to ruin wrestling. I think it went into that kind of narrative. But there was not a single match that I didn't enjoy. I disagree with night 1 being terrible. I actually thought there were some great matches in night 1. I really did. But you know, I think that's the problem. I've been looking on the internet and there's so many people bitching and moaning. And I think it's because they hype themselves up to a level that no event ever would be able to deliver. But I loved WrestleMania. I thought it was great. I loved night 1. I loved night 2. I really loved the Raw on Monday night. I thought that set up a lot of stuff. Very excited with where the Rollins stuff goes and the Randy Orton stuff goes and the Heyman stuff goes. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't think there was one terrible match, but that's just me. Okay, so the next question is from Elkie, who says, "Hey Craig, just a comment before the question. I acquired acquiring regular coins for Magic. Your cheapest option is never going to be a Magic shop. If you have a rare coin dealer in your area, I'd recommend that since they offer lower value coins and you can get them at face value. Otherwise, eBay sells them for a lot of reasonable prices." Very good point. I tend to go for the quickest option, to be perfectly honest, but you are 100% correct. Thanks for jumping in. That said, question this week. I have some routines that friends of mine have said are good for publishing, but I'm finding myself unsure about how to go about it. Do you have any advice? Next step. Thanks. I would say if you want to publish them themselves, I think yourself, it used to be ebooks that people went through, but they're going to be, a lot of people don't read ebooks these days. I would consider maybe going down the Penguin Partner Program. So you can set up an account on Penguin, and it's called the Penguin Partner Program. And basically, you can upload tricks that Penguin will sell for you on your behalf. And a lot of them are instant downloads, but I believe they can be physical products as well. But you can literally upload them yourself and upload a tutorial and a trailer, and Penguin will market them just like they do all of their other products that go through the Penguin shop. And I've always said to people, if you're wanting to make a name for yourself as a creator, going down the route of the Penguin Partner Program is the way to go. So if you've got stuff that, routines that are good for publishing and it's not a physical item, I would consider maybe, this is the advice I gave Chris James, take a trick or a couple of tricks and upload them onto the Penguin Partner Program for free and then send them everywhere, rave about it everywhere. because you want to build a name for yourself. And the way to build a name for yourself is for people to see what it is that you're capable of. So if you put a trick up there for free, and then you tell everyone that they can download it for free, and all you ask in return is for reviews, and they review it, I mean, you're going to get a ton of reviews. You're going to get a load of people buying the trick that wouldn't normally buy it. And as long as it's a good trick, you're going to be building up a reputation. You're going to be building up a brand. And honestly, as a creator, that's one of the most important things that you could do. So I would say go down the publishing route. The other option is that you speak to like a Genie magazine, for example, or Magic Scene or somewhere like that, and you have them publish the trick for you on your behalf as a trick in the magazine, which again is going to build up your brand, but not as much as the Penguin Partner Program. So that's the way that I'd go. I mean, you can obviously publish it through a production company. I can't really comment on that unless you tell me more about the tricks. Like, are they physical products? Are they downloads? If you give me more information, I can give you more advice on that side of things. And I do go through this. I've got an entire section in my new book, Absolute Madness, where I talk about how to actually, create and release a best-selling product. So it's worth looking at that if you've got my book, but that's kind of the first steps that I would take. Okay, so the next question is from Divish Magician, who says, what's the right way to ask other wedding suppliers to patch you work? When I see a photographer or a DJ and it's an event now, I always introduce myself and give him my card. Usually I show him a trick and say, now that you've seen I'm good, would you be happy to recommend me to couples, as you usually get booked before the magician? In return, I would happily give you a commission, but what's the right way to have this conversation? It doesn't really work to say, if you recommend me, I'll recommend you, because by the time they contact a magician, they'll have 99% already booked a photographer or a DJ, so most of the time that doesn't work. Honestly, mate, I don't think that's the best route to take. First of all, if you see a photographer or a DJ and it's an event, they've got work to do themselves. It's fine to network and go, hey, I'm Craig, how are you? But showing them a trick, I don't think is the right way to go, because they've got their own thing. Like, if I'm, last week I was at a corporate event, I was doing a big illusion show, I was having to set a show up, I was liaising with the venue. If I had someone come up to me and show me a card trick at that point, I just wouldn't be interested. There's a million other things. Pitching yourself and showing someone a trick, and especially saying, now you've seen I'm good, will you recommend me? That's not the way to go with things. That's genuinely not the way to build a relationship. What you're talking about here is networking. And my biggest piece of advice to you is, if you want to go down the networking route, I would join a networking organization. I really would. I'd join a networking organization and learn Giver's Gain and learn how to network properly. Giver's Gain means if you give them business, they're going to want to give you business, because the way to build up a relationship with a wedding supplier is the same way you build up a relationship with a networking colleague, which is they have to get to know you, like you, and trust you. Because they don't know you're good. They've seen you at an event and you've potentially shown them one trick. And honestly, saying to them, I'll give you a commission if you recommend me, just smacks of desperation. Like, it really does. That just smacks of desperation. Like, if a DJ turned around to me and said, hey, I'll give you 10% of my fee if you recommend me, I'd be like, I'm not too sure about that. Because the thing is, you're asking them to recommend you to their clients. I only recommend people to my clients if I know 100,000,000% that they are really, really good. And I'm not going to get swayed by watching a DJ in an event and seeing him run a few songs. That there's more to it than that, right? So you have to get them to know you, like you, and trust you. And the way to do that is to introduce yourself. And don't just say, here's my card. You got to get right. The thing is, the way that networking works is people like talking about themselves. Don't forget that they've got their own business as well. They want to get more work themselves. So the first thing I would do is I'd say, hey, I'm Craig, I'm the magician here today. What's your name? John. John, nice to meet you, John. You're the photographer, right? Yeah. Have you got a card I could have? I'd love to take your card. Where do you based? What sort of stuff do you do? Speak to them first. Find out a little bit about that. If you've got a couple of minutes and they've got a couple of minutes, find out more about their business. Find out about how long they've been a photographer, what type of events they photograph at, how far they're prepared to travel. And then take their card and say, you know what, I'd love to connect with you outside of this event. Maybe I could drop you an email and we can meet up for a coffee or something sometime. and then just leave it at that. And then say, oh, by the way, this is my card. Really nice to meet you. And I always, when I was doing that sort of thing on a regular basis, I'd be like, hey, maybe I can connect with you on LinkedIn. Are you on LinkedIn? Yeah, okay. I'll drop you an email and I'll connect with you on LinkedIn. And then what I would do is when I got back the next day, I'd send them an email and I'd say, hey, it was great to meet you at the event. It was a fantastic show. Thanks very much for taking time to chat to me. Obviously we are in a similar sort of industry. I'd love to sit down to you and chat and see how we can help each other. Perhaps there's a good time that we could grab a cup of coffee. And I'll send them that email and I'll send them a connection request on LinkedIn with a similar sort of message. And then I'll build up the relationship that way, as opposed to going, hey, let me show you a trick. Now I'm good. Can you please give me bookings? And if you give me a booking, I'll give you a commission. I need the work. Please give me the work. Please. You're just coming across as desperate, Dibshan. You really are. Build up relationships with these people, right? That's the most important thing to do. Build up relationships with them. And you say that it doesn't really work to say you recommend me. I disagree, because there's so many different ways that you can help a wedding photographer. If you've got a big social media presence, for example, you could say, hey, are you on Instagram? I'd love to connect with you on Instagram. Maybe I can do a reel of you taking photos and I'll share it on my Instagram and tag your page in. It's something like that. There's different ways and there's a lot of the time you go into wedding fairs, right? You go to wedding fairs, you could say to the guy, look, I'll tell you what, give me some of your business cards, and if I meet somebody that wants a photographer, I'll pass you your card on. There's a million different ways of doing it, but really the thing you need to understand is building up any type of working relationship. It's all about givers gain. You give them business, they are going to want to give you business. You show that you mean business, they are going to want to get in bed with you from a business point of view. So change the way that you're thinking about this, Divishan, because the route you're going down at the moment isn't going to work. Okay, so the next question is Clayton9580, who says, hi Craig, thanks for all of your work, you're more than welcome. In a nutshell, what is a really practical torn and restored bill? I want to do extreme burn, but I want to turn the 20s into ones and then act really angry and tear up one of the bills and then restore it. I could use prop money. If you don't mind, I'll actually destroy the bill. I'd love to hear your insights. Let me see. I'm looking for a particular thing which would be perfect for you. Okay, here we go. It's not a torn and restored bill, but if you've not seen the Hancock effect, that's what I would consider you going into straight after Extreme Burn. So the Hancock effect is by Kyle Purnell. You can get it off the Penguin website. Here's what happens. A $1 bill is borrowed from the Spectator. An arrow and a box are drawn at opposite ends of the bill. The bill is folded into quarters so the audience can sign their name below the arrow. Then with no funny moves, the magician visually removes the ink from the bill. Next, they crumple the bill and place it in the hands of the spectators. The magician tosses the ink back into the bill and the spectators' hands, and they open it up, and their signature that was definitely underneath the arrow is now on the other end of the bill inside the previously empty box. It's not a torn and restored. I was thinking that it was, but it's not. However, it is one of the best effects I've ever seen. Watching Kyle do this is mind-boggling. It genuinely is mind-boggling. It's absolutely awesome, and I would highly, highly recommend it. That's but the one that I was actually thinking of is Felony, which is another instant download by Kyle Purnell. Kyle Purnell doesn't create... Here's what happens. You borrow a $1 bill from your Spectator. If you want, the bill can even be signed. The dollar is folded in half and then torn down the center. Both halves are shown completely... and both hands are shown completely empty by the magician. Then with a gentle rub, the magician visually restores the tear in the center of the bill. The bill can immediately be handed back for examination. Kyle developed a very simple gimmick that allows you to get an almost perfect tearing illusion with a borrowed bill. In addition to the basic handling, you'll learn how to do this with a signed bill and even get ideas on how you can present this with polymer bills if you live in Europe or Australia. The gimmick is easy to make, materials every magician has access to. You'll learn handling if you want to perform this for larger crowds. This is the torn and restored bill gimmick you'll carry with you all the time. This is Felony by Kyle Purnell, and I couldn't agree with that more. So, Hancock Effect and Felony, both by Kyle Purnell, both available from the Penguin website. Both of those are brilliant, and it would do exactly what you want it to do. because you're going to have a real one. So you could take one of those ones and you could do felony, and you could maybe even then go into the Hancock effect. So I would look into some Carl Purnell downloads, instant downloads, felony and Hancock effect, both on Penguin Magic. Okay, next question is from Robert Francis Magician. Hey Rob, how you doing? Who says, hi Craig, thanks for answering the question. What I meant was, what is your process of writing a script? If you have a trick and you don't know what to say about it, hope you're well, look forward to the phone call. I've got to call you. If you have a trick and you don't know what to say about it, what's your process for writing a script? If you have a trick and you don't know what to say about it. Great question. So I understand that. So it's all to do, for me anyway, with inspiration. I tend not to try and go down the route of using the presentation that is included with the actual tutorial. I try to make it my own wherever possible, and I like to try and change that presentation around. The other thing that you need to remember is you need to think about several factors. One is, who are the people that you're performing for? Who is your audience, or who are your audience? Who is the spectator you're performing for? What is your character when you're performing? What's the type of magic that you would normally do? Do you have a character that you play, or what persona do you come across as when you are actually performing? All of that stuff is very, very important, because what you can't do is turn into an 18th century gentleman to present one particular trick when that's not the character you're playing through the rest of the show. I saw a young magician about 15 years old, and he was doing this trick where he talked about traveling to India. And it's just like, it just didn't make any sense. It wasn't the sort of thing that you would expect someone that age to say or do. So the most important thing really, first of all, is to think about who you are, how you perform your magic, the character you portray, and then what you can do is you can look for inspiration that that fits within the other stuff that you do. The other thing is, think about where you're actually performing this trick. So are you going to be performing it as part of a set? So for example, Ryland's just bought a trick and he's going to be using it as the opening of a new act, right? And he knows it's going to be the opening and he knows what he's going to transition into. So he's included stuff within the presentation that kind of almost lays Easter eggs for the next trick that's coming up, if that kind of makes sense. So what you need to do is you need to think about where it's going in your act as well, if you have a place for it at that point. And then it's about finding inspiration. And the best way to find inspiration is to look into yourself. I like performing magic where I'm talking about stuff I'm interested in. You'll see a lot of the performances on Magic TV talk about time travel. They talk about things like Doctor Who. They talk about psychic paper. They talk about wrestling, because that's what I'm into. So when I'm into something, I talk about it. It's like one of the things I love about Ryland is all of the magic he does. He presents it as he would present it as a kid, because he is a kid, right? There's certain tricks that he would never do because it doesn't work. He gravitates to tricks about Lego and Rubik's Cubes and stuff like that because he's a kid, right? So look for inspiration within yourself and look at the thing and say, right, okay, well, what is it and what does this do? Well, this is this and this is what it does. Okay, so how can I relate that to what I'm interested in? Well, okay, this is a card trick and it's an ambitious card. Okay, well, what can I do with that? Well, how about instead of an ambitious card, it's a time travel device. And when the card comes to the top, which is what the trick is, the card comes to the top, that's going back in time to when the card was on top of the deck. So you see what I mean? And look at my my trick, Future Craig from Visible, and you'll see what I mean. Taking the invisible deck, pushing it to one side and saying, well, okay, everyone does the invisible deck that way. Let me find a new, unique way of doing it that fits for me. So yeah, I mean, that's really all I've got to say about that. That's the best advice I can give you. I hope that makes sense, and I'll speak to you soon. Okay, so Punkala says, Craig, could you explain what the dual reality principle is? Can you give us examples? Okay. It's difficult to explain certain things without actually giving the method away, but I'll give you a perfect example of what dual reality is. So here's an example. So if I said, let's say I'm doing a mentalism set, and I need a spectator to come up and help me on stage, right? And so I go out into the audience and I say, you can come up and help me. And as I walk them up onto stage, I switch my mic pack off and I go, oh, what's your name? John. Nice to meet you, John. And where are you from? You're from Warsaw. Okay, brilliant. Fantastic. Then I switch the mic on and I do that as I'm walking them up on stage. So now they're up on stage, and I go, fantastic, so let's give them a round of applause for my volunteer. Now, we've never met before, have we? And I have no idea who you are. We've not set this up beforehand. You're not somebody that I've spoken to before the show. Okay, so first of all, your name is John, is that right? Yes. Now, that's an example of dual reality. From the audience's point of view, I've just read his mind and told him his name is John. From his point of view, I asked him his name and I've just said, your name's John, is that right? And he's going to go, yes, that's dual reality, because the spectator is having one thing happen and the audience is perceiving that in another way. I'll give you another example, which is, and I can't really explain exactly how it works, but The Solution by Michael Murray is a perfect example of dual reality. So if you don't know what the solution is, the spectator's brought on stage, you give them a mixed up Rubik's Cube, they take it behind their back, they mix it up, and when they bring it out, it's solved, and they look freaked out, and the audience looks freaked out. Now, from the audience's point of view, the trick is that the spectator took the cube behind their back, mixed it up behind their back, and they've solved it behind their back. From the spectator's point of view, they took a cube, well, they have a different perception of the trick, right? Without saying too much, they have a different perception of the trick. It's still impressive, and you'll see that when you do the solution on somebody, they're still freaked out, but the perception is different. They both had an amazing trick, but the audience have perceived it in a different way to the way that the spectator on stage has perceived it. And that's the best example of a really strong dual reality, when they're both experiencing a really strong trick, but they've got a different perception of it, if that makes sense. Now, that's very, very different to instant stooging. If I took a coin and I put a coin in my hand but vanished it, and I said, hold your hand out, squeeze this coin, hold it tightly, and give them a bit of a wink without anyone noticing, I'm saying to that person, I know the coin's not in your hand, you know the coin's not in your hand, but play along. And that's instant stooging. A lot of people get instant stooging and dual reality kind of mixed up, but they are two very, very separate things. So hopefully that gives you an example of what dual reality is. Okay, next question is the magic of Seth, who says, I know you have an April birthday, though not too sure when. I hope it was fantastic. 12th of April was very good, thank you very much. I went to London with my kids. I had a great time. I'm in the process of putting together a longer stage set. Up until now, the most I've done is 20 minutes. I've found by putting 3 15-minute sets together doesn't make a good 45-minute set, if that makes sense. What are some ways to make everything feel cohesive? Well, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is think about the structure of the show. So I always put the opening of the show and the close of the show in first. And I try to make it so that everything goes full circle. So in my cabaret show, I close with the trick that's on the Netrix called Destination Mistake. At the beginning of the show, I give the box out for Destination Mistake at the very, very beginning of the show. So at the end of the show, the last thing that happens is the show is brought full circle to what I did at the very beginning. And that's an example of like bringing everything full circle. The other thing that you need to consider is transitions. You need to think about how you're transitioning from one piece into the next piece. Right, what's your opening routine going to be? Right, why does that work as an opening routine? Then what trick are you going into next? And you also need to think about the type of magic. When I first started doing kid shows, I had a show that I thought I was very happy with, the kids liked it, and when I looked back and looked at it properly, I realised it was a bit whack. And the reason it was a bit whack is because I did 5 different variations of magical colouring, and every trick was the same. The props were different, the way I presented it was different, but the effect on the audience was very similar. And you don't want to do that, right? So you want to think about what the effect is on the audience. You want to think about the actual tricks, and you also want to think about transitioning from one part to the next part to the next part. Start with 20 minutes, then up it to 30 minutes. So add an extra 1 or 2 tricks in the middle of the set and go, right, okay, let's put this in and let's do 30 minutes. Then add another 10 minutes, then add another 5 minutes. And before you know it, you'll be at 45 minutes. Before you know it, you'll have 2 45-minute shows. You really will. But think about transitions, think about opening and closing, and put those in place first, and make sure that there's no crossover of routines and you're transitioning clearly from one part to the next part. And then think about how you can actually flow. Like, so for example, one thing that I do is I do something called a suit jacket escape. Now, once I've done the suit jacket escape, I have 2 spectators on stage. I always say at the end of the suit jacket escape, now give a big round of applause to John and James. John, can you take a seat? Fantastic. Give John a big round of applause. James, stay here. because I always give an award, a prize to my favourite volunteer. And although we're very near the beginning of the show, James, I know that there's no one that's going to beat you. You were fantastic. So you get a prize. You get to stay on stage and you get to perform for every single person here on your own. And then I go into a routine with James. So he stays, and I have a logical reason for him to stay on stage because I'm now getting him to do a trick. And I typically do Cue the Magic or my 4-ring routine on the Netrix or something like that. So that'll give you an example, and you just, it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but you'll get there sooner rather than later. Okay, so the next question is from Stephen Mackenzie Noble, who says, "Hi Craig, I was wondering if you'd reviewed Tic Tac Toe Mini by Bond Lee or had the opportunity to see it. I've got the original Tic Tac Toe, so I haven't seen Tic Tac Toe Mini. I've got the original Tic Tac Toe. I absolutely love it. If it's anything like the original Tic Tac Toe, I do that all the time in most shows. So yes, I think it's fantastic. I can't really talk about Tic Tac Toe Mini because I haven't got it, but if the method's the same, it's bloody awesome. And it's a great way to theme things to an audience. Okay, so the next question is Kendrick1, who says, "Hi Craig, I'd love to hear your recommendations or instruction to arrange an egg bag routine." Well, my full egg bag routine is on the Netrix, under the Stage Magic section. So if you want to see exactly what I do with an egg bag, then go onto the Netrix. The full routine's there. I do the egg bag all of the time. I absolutely love the egg bag. My presentation involves breaking the rules of magic. So I say, hey, I bring up the fact that I've been kicked out the magic circle in the past, and I say, look, guys, I've been kicked out the magic circle in the past for this, but I'm going to show you a trick, and I'm going to break every rule of magic. There are 3 rules in magic that should never be broken, and for your entertainment pleasure, I'm going to break every single one of them. And then the first rule is never tell the audience what you're going to do ahead of time. And I say, well, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make an egg appear inside this bag, and that's what I do. I make an egg appear inside the bag. And then I say the second rule is never repeat a trick, but I'm going to repeat it for you again. I'm going to do it again. So then I make the egg vanish. I say if I'm going to make it, do it again, I'm going to have to make it vanish. So I make the egg vanish, and then that's 4 rules of magic, that's right. And then I repeat the trick and I bring it back. The third rule of magic is never tell the audience how it works. Now, I can't really break that one, as I would get kicked out of the magic circle. But what I can do is I can slow down my performance of the trick so slowly you'll see exactly how it works. And then I do the classic egg bag slow motion bit, and I make the egg disappear again. And then the final rule is never allow the spectator to do the trick themselves. And that's when I give them the bag, they do the trick themselves, I don't do anything, and that's the end of the trick. So it's kind of I love performing it because it's such an interesting hook. I'm going to break every rule of magic. So yeah, there you go. That's my egg bag routine, but I go through it in depth on the Netrix. Okay, so the next question is from Divishan Magician, who says, what are some good coin tricks that use 2 shells? Well, I mean, most tricks these days, unless it's a double shell gimmick, don't use 2 shells. Unless you're using a double shell gimmick, there's a lot of double shell gimmicks out there. The most obvious one and the most popular one is the 3CM or the triple threat, and I did a video on routines with the triple threat recently, so I'm not going to go into that into much detail, but I did do I think I did a hows and whys on the double shell gimmick, so you can go and look at that if you want to see that. But I mean, there were routines. The original reverse matrix was by Paul Gertner. He published it in Steel and Silver, and it was a reverse matrix that used 2 shells and extra coins, and over time a lot of tricks that have used 2 shells have been streamlined and don't use 2 shells anymore. Trebloon has technically 2 shells, and I've got a whole bunch of routines with Trebloon. If you pick up the Trebloon set, you'll know what I'm talking about. But outside of that, I would look at my hows and whys with the triple threat, hows and whys with the double shell gimmick. That should give you some ideas of the stuff that I do with it. Okay, so the next question is Magic Trades, who says, hi Craig, I'm looking to start building some confidence performing by going to one of my local bars or pubs. Whilst I'm pretty handy with a deck of cards, I'd like to start pushing my comfort zone a bit and perform some non-card items. I want to add a few new everyday carry tricks that can be stored in my wallet or back pocket, like Powerball 60, for instance, which I own. Do you have any good suggestions? For reference, I've got a budget of about $100 to build a small act. Okay, so everyday carry, I love everyday carry. It depends on what you define as an everyday carry. I always, for me, there's 3 things that denote everyday carry. The first is the key ring, the second is the wallet, and the third is your phone, right? So in my wallet, I always have ED Seat, which is my sort of EDC mentalism trick using receipts. There's other tricks that use receipts as well. Torn and Restored, Saturn Magic, Paul Fowler put out a receipt-themed mentalism trick a while ago. I love EDC. It's my favourite way to do it. I know a lot of people use that as well. With keys, I love Keymaster. I love Gatekeeper. Prophet Key has just recently come out, again by Paul Fowler. That's very, very good. You've got in the phone, there's so many apps that you can do. I mean, there's a ridiculous amount of apps that will work. Toxic Plus is one that I use an awful lot. That's a great trick. Gotta love Toxic Plus. What else? Digital Force Bag is fantastic. It's worth picking up Digital Force Bag. All of those are great everyday carry options. I'm actually doing a video that's going out next month, and it's like how to put together a 20-minute everyday carry act for no money. And I'm teaching a bunch of tricks that you can do and you can make up yourself, and it'll just fit into your wallet. So you might want to look out for that. Again, Paul Fowler. Paul Fowler's the king of everyday carry, really, when you think about it. Paul Fowler bought out, I think it was Paul Fowler. Yeah, it was. Paul Fowler bought out the Overboard or Overdraft or something like that. The 1914 credit card trick. That was really good. And when you're looking at credit cards, you know, the stuff that James Keatley and Chris James have just put out, Merger and Surge and all of those tricks, they're great as well. And also, you know, the Bitcoin by Chris James, which is the little Bic chip that turns into a lighter. That's a fantastic routine as well. So all of those will work, and you can't go wrong with any of those tricks. There's probably a bunch more that I'm forgetting. There are a bunch more that I'm forgetting. I know there are. But look out for the video. There's a video coming soon on this, but that should give you a good starting point. Okay, so the next question is Donald Wright, who says, "Hi Craig, you have my full support to jam on it. Thanks for the kind words. I was thinking that after you do several cheater chip routines, you bring out 2 sheets of stickers and explain to them you will put random numbers and random cards on the chips. Tell them you'll pair the cards and numbers in a way they would never have thought of, or you could use Quinter to force the number from one stack and Equivote to force the card from the other stack." Yeah, there's a lot of options there. It's a really great idea, Donald. I've come up with some ideas with it, and I'll maybe do a video on it in the future and share some of the ideas. But honestly, dude, the idea that you came up with the Will the Jacks match and that concept is just genius. So thanks so much. Okay, so the next question is I'm Too Young to Die, who says, "Hi Craig, I was wondering I use an Android phone. Is it worth getting an iPhone, even an iPhone 13, to use some of the apps?" Yeah, I'd definitely get an iPhone. I don't know if iPhone 13 works with everything. You'd have to check. It might do, but definitely get an iPhone. There's so much stuff you can do with an iPhone. Just shortcuts on its own is a perfect example of stuff that you can do that you can't do with an Android that really will take your magic to the next level. I'd absolutely consider doing that. I had this conversation with Nemad the other day. He was watching me do Toxic Plus just in a bar. And I said, "That's one of the best tricks ever created." And he's like, "Yeah, but I'm never going to get an iPhone." I'm like, "I don't understand." Because you'd buy a new trick for your stage show for a few £100s. You can get tricks like that and a million others just by buying an iPhone. So yeah, absolutely I would. Okay, I've got another follow-up question from I'm Too Young to Die, who says, the second question is a follow-up. If I'm using my Android phone, would Digital Force Bag still work with an Android phone? Because when I am using the performance, it comes up with the iPhone layout, and using an Android phone, I can't let people see the screen. How do I go about doing this? I don't think they support Android anymore. I might be wrong, but I'm fairly sure Digital Force Bag doesn't support Android anymore. I might be wrong. I can't really give you any advice on Android. I have never owned or held an Android phone in my life, so I can't really give you any advice on this. Okay, the next question is from Stephen Devereaux, who says, "Hi Craig, this new trick from Tora called Lucky Games looks brilliant. What do you think of it?" I've not seen it at all, Stephen, so I will check it out. I do like Tora magic, so I will check it out, and maybe I'll get it on the review show soon. Okay, so the next question is from Divishan Magician, who says, "I'm unavailable for my restaurant residency 1 week, so I'm thinking about passing it on for cover that week in a gig share Facebook group. However, I'm having second thoughts on that after hearing your horror story of a magician that undercut your price and stole your residency. I've been working with this restaurant for a long time and built a good relationship with the manager, but I feel like passing it on is still a risk because of what happened to you. Would you personally think it's worth the risk and be willing to risk this again? I suppose it depends on how trustworthy the magician is, but you can never tell. It's totally up to you, man. Like, I run an entertainment agency where I have to trust people to go out to gigs all of the time and not poach my clients. And at some point, if you want to grow and you want to get work, you are going to have to go down that route. But I would advise you to be very, very careful. It has been more than once that people have taken gigs off me and stole them. And it's been a very difficult thing to deal with because those people I've always considered friends. And it's a difficult pill to swallow when you get a phone call from a restaurant and they go, well, you know, we've gone with another option, and you find out it's somebody you put in there a few weeks ago. So it is a difficult thing. It depends on a few things. And the first thing is, what conversation did you have with the restaurant when you first set up the residency with them? Did you guarantee them that you were going to be there every single week? Because if you guaranteed that to them, you are going to have to put in somebody else who can cover. My advice is to put in somebody that you absolutely can trust, and you have a very clear conversation with them that, you know, if they try to undercut you or give out their business cards in your booking, then, you know, they'll be hell to pay, you know, however you want to put it. But if you had a conversation with the restaurant and you go, hey, there's going to be times where I'm not going to be able to come in because I'm going to have another booking that I need to do. If they were fine with that at the beginning, I wouldn't bother putting somebody in. But if they're expecting somebody every single week and you've advertised it to them that you will be there every single week, and they're advertising it to their clients as having somebody there every single week, there's no way you can't do that. You either have to say no to the other booking, or you have to, and you do it yourself, or you have to find somebody who will do it for you. You know, it very much depends on how you want to go with that. And also, the other thing to consider is you want to put somebody in there that's going to do a good job. I lost a residency once because I went on holiday for 2 weeks. I put somebody else in there, and when I came back, they were so upset with the quality of the magic while I'd been away that they binned the whole thing off. So you want to make sure it's somebody that's decent as well, that is going to perform at least to the level that you do. If you put somebody in there that you don't know, you haven't seen them perform, and then you just put them in there. Because the thing with magicians is they can talk a big game. So many magicians will make out how brilliant they are. You know, I'm in a few Facebook gig share groups as well, and, you know, I've seen people posting in these groups saying, I don't go out less than £1,000. I don't go out less than £1,500. And I've put a gig up saying, hey, it's a low fee, but if you want it, it's yours. And they private messaged me and said, oh, I'll take it. I've got nothing that day. And, you know, it's very easy to play Johnny Big Bollocks when you're in front of when you're on social media and nobody's paying attention and no one's really, but, you know, it's another thing behind the scenes. So make sure that you put somebody in that will do a good job, somebody that you can trust, but really it's based on the conversation that you had with the residency when you first set it up. And remember, at some point, you're going to lose that residency anyway. Every residency goes at some point for whatever reason. So, you know, if you're relying on that residency, focus on getting another couple as well. Okay, so I've got another question from Divishan Magician, who says, I've managed to get a free trial at a rugby stadium for pre-match hospitality entertainment, but I'm not sure after that how much to charge, as they are a business themselves and this is regular. But then again, sports stadiums are rich. I charge £300 to £350 for a wedding and a corporate event at £100 to £150 for my weekly residency. So based on that, how much do you think I should charge for this? Well, really, that's a conversation. You say that sports stadiums are rich. A lot of the time, they really aren't. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. So really, and the other thing is, you got to remember that you are the single most unimportant part of the experience. That you know, if you're doing pre-match hospitality entertainment, it's probably going to be VIP boxes, I imagine. It's not going to be for everybody. It's probably going to be for a specific select clientele. Nobody's signed up to get that hospitality at that sports stadium in order to have a magician. They haven't gone, oh, we're going to get a box at this sports stadium because they've got a magician. That's why I'm going there. They've signed up because they want to see the game, whatever the game is, the rugby game. They want to see the rugby game. They want to see They want to have this nice experience of going here and watching a show and getting food and so on and so forth. Let's be completely honest. Let's call a spade, and let's not dick about Divishan. If you weren't at that stadium, not one person would complain. You're not going to have a single person that's going to go to that stadium that goes, I would like my money back. Oh, really? Why would you like your money back? Well, I came here and I signed up to watch a rugby game and get food, and I'm very unhappy that the magician wasn't here. Never going to happen, right? You have to understand that. So you aren't an integral part of their thing. And you also have to understand that they have a bottom line that they have to hit. They have money that they have to take in, and there's a lot of expenses running a rugby stadium, running any type of stadium, the amount of staff that you need, all of the overheads, all of the costs. People try to cut costs wherever possible when running a business. So that's you need to, when you go into a situation like this, what you need to do is you need to think about what you can do to add value to their offering, what you can do to make it so that you are invaluable. That's what you need to do. And that's when you can then say, well, I'm going to charge this much, but this is what I'm going to do in return. And also, without being funny, Divishan, this is a conversation you should have had before doing a free trial. Because this comes across as desperate. Because if you've had a conversation with this rugby stadium, and that's what you've said, I've managed to get a free trial with a rugby stadium, I'm not sure after that how much to charge. So in other words, you've not had a conversation about fee. You've literally just gone in there and gone, can I come along and do this stadium for free, please? 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 That's the conversation you've had. That's what you've had. That's not how a business negotiation goes. How you offer a free trial is you offer a free trial to sweeten the deal. You go in with a fee because they might have accepted the fee straight away. You go in and you go, right, okay, so this is how much I normally charge. However, if you're prepared to have me on match nights, then in return, I'll lower that fee by 25% or 50% or whatever you want to do. Does that sound acceptable to you? You then get a yes or no, because what we're doing here, right, is we're talking about the sales process, and we're talking about turning negatives, right? This is the whole thing that we're talking about right now. When you have a sales conversation with somebody, it's all about impulsing them, turning their negative to get them to say yes. So I want you to imagine, we're going to talk about something called an impulse curve. Imagine that you've got a graph in front of you. Down the vertical line, you've got how impulse they are. In other words, how excited they are about having you as a part of their event or a part of their stadium. Down this end, down the horizontal end, you've got the time. In other words, the amount of time you're spending pitching them on this thing. And what happens, you start at 0. And then as you speak to people, their interest goes up and up and up and up and up. And what's going to happen is at some point you close them. When I say close, what I mean is you say something to get them to say yes. So it might be, so that's the price. Shall I book you in then? That's an example of a close. They will then say yes or no. If they say yes, job done, no free trial needed. If they say no at that point, what you then have to do is you have to turn that negative. Now, in sales term, what you need to understand is when people say no, a lot of the time they don't mean no. It's a request for more information. They're giving you a negative. They won't normally say no. They'll say no because. In this case, it might be, no, that price is a little bit more expensive than what we're wanting to pay. So now you need to turn the negative. And the way to turn the negative is, first of all, you agree with them, which throws people off kilter, because they're not expecting you to agree. So if they say, no, it's too expensive, you go, totally, and I understand exactly what you're talking about. Now you use something called sheep factor, which is an impulse factor, and basically it means everyone else does it. If everyone else does it, you're going to want to do it as well. So you say, well, I know exactly what you're talking about. I work with a lot of different stadiums that have said the same thing to me in the past, but the reason they went for it is because... And then you give them another thing that you can do to impulse them. It could be the reason they go for it is because it means that their clientele that come in have a much better experience, because you're offering them entertainment at a very limited price, a very cheap price. It's not going to cost you much, but you're giving extra entertainment to the people that are coming in through the door. So it's a very small amount on your bottom line, but it's going to make a big difference from an experiential point of view. And the other thing, by the way, is you want to make sure that you understand that corporate jargon. Experiential and stuff like that are words that you should be using. And then that's when you've turned the negative. Now they might come back to you and go, no, we don't know if it's going to work. Well, that's another negative. So now you turn that negative. Look, I know exactly what you're talking about. I worked with a stadium down the road and they didn't want to try it initially. But the reason they did is because, and now you're returning the negative, the reason they did is because I went in on a free trial. I tried it out for one event for free. They realized how good it was and they realized how much value I was giving to their clientele. And then they booked me for the rest of the season. I don't normally do this. But would you like me to offer you a free trial coming up so you can see exactly how this would work? And then assuming that trial works and you're happy with what I do, would you then be happy to book me for the rest of the season? That's how a negotiation works. That's what you do. The fact that you're going in there and offering a free trial and you haven't even discussed the fee that you're charging beforehand is frankly insane. Because how did that conversation go? Hi, is that blah blah rugby stadium? Yeah, yes it is, yeah. Hi, my name's Divishan. I'm a magician. Can I come and work at your event, please? Because I'm a really good magician and I do magic and it goes really well and everyone likes it. Oh no, we don't want anyone. I'll come and do it for free. All right then. Like, I don't see how that conversation would go. You need to have the conversation. And I'm not being a dick here. I'm just being honest. I know you're 18 now, dude, and you're running your own business and you're going out and getting gigs. So if I don't fucking tell you this, then nobody will. Let me explain. You need to make sure that you have the fee set before you agree to any free trial. Because if you have, else they're just taking the piss. You've got nothing. They need to know what they're going to be signing up for if they like what it is that you're doing. If not, you're just giving away your time and energy for free, for nothing. So what I would do is, you say, I've managed to get a free trial. I'm not surprised you've managed to get a free trial if you haven't. It's not difficult. Give me 10 minutes on a phone and let me ring up some stadiums and go, hi, my name's Craig, I'm a magician. Can I come and work for you for free? Yeah, all right then. It's not a hard thing to manage to get a free trial if you haven't discussed the fee with them in the first place. My advice is to go back to them and say, oh, by the way, before I do this free trial, this is my price. Are you okay with that? Ha! Not a chance. All right, I'm not going to do the free trial. All right, bye. What's the point? What's the point? Unless you want to do it for free because you think giving out your business card is worth actually giving your time for free. Spoiler, it's not. But unless you actually think that there's a way of doing it for free that's going to benefit you, I would go back to them and tell them the price first before you agree to any free trial. Then when you set the price, make the price something that you are comfortable with. Because once you've set that price, it's going to be very difficult to change it. And the final question is from Stephen Devereaux, who says, hi Craig, hope you're well. Are the tricks on Timo and Shine any good because they sell for half the price? No, they're probably shit. That's the problem with these websites. They're rip-offs generally. Not all the time, but generally they're rip-offs. I remember somebody emailing me. I can't remember which website they got it from. They were really unhappy. And they were complaining to me because they bought the Nightshade coin set and it didn't come with any coins. And I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. Where did you get it from? And they told me the website. I was like, that's okay. How much did you pay? And they paid like $5. I'm like, well, I'm not surprised they didn't come. Literally all you've done there is you bought the tutorial. Like, you know, the bottom line is that if you see something reduced by 50%, there's a very good chance it's a substandard rip-off of a trick that's been put out there, and best case scenario, it'll fall apart very, very quickly. So my advice is not to bother and just go to a reputable magic dealer. So there you go, guys. That's another video in the bag. Thank you once again for joining me right here on Magic TV. Don't forget, you want to see more videos like this, all you got to do is like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Now, if you haven't already joined the Netrix, please do so. It's my online streaming platform for magicians, and you can get access immediately. Outside of that, I will see you again soon. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Craig, and this is Magic TV.